because my hand was hurting. I have not taken a lot of physical notes. I just pretend to in class. So, so essentially, like there was like several things you guys hit on in that was really important for me because I think, like I'm not sure. I think JR, I think you read it before. Gabby, you don't have to do homework. I'm not that special. It was my I did a piece on black men and bird chess. And I put it on my Medium.
Yes.
It
Yes.
was it's still my favorite piece. No one can ever talk shit about that one. That was my baby. And Teron Moore at MTV News is still mad he did not email me back in time for that piece.
Oh wow.
Because it was supposed to be for him, but he just never got back to me because it was like a VMA thing going on.
Mm.
So I self-published it, and in that I'm like constantly talking about like this way that my like just reflecting in general on like how my expression of my body is often commodified in ways I do not intend for it to be, and it's led me down like a lot of like personal journeys to like discovery of like how people perceive me and how so much of it is a fetishization in like a lot of
Mm.
ways. Literally, either white women wanted a big black dick or white men wanted to fuck the big black dick. And that is just the grotesque reality of it. That's why I'm like, why sports is so as it is, and why, a lot of things are as they are in like hyper masculine cultures where black men are allowed to be perceived as dominant and as powerful. But in a lot of that aspects, it's like, when people make their assumptions about me, it's like until I perform in a certain way, the assumption is straight because you're reflecting every, hyper masculine situation that's going on. But like when you're younger and you're effeminate, it's like the shocker is that you could actually like women when you're as a young black
Mm.
boy because people can quote unquote tell early on about us, which is in itself a weird thing. It's all about gender expression because I've
Mhm.
gotten that too. It was like, it was up until my uncle got confirmation that I had a crush on. It was around my mother's wedding. I was like 11 years old or 13 years old. And like he brought my cousin's friend from school over, and I did have a crush on her. It was a very palpable crush. It was not a joke. I danced with her. It was the first time I ever danced with anyone. It was a very cute situation. It was like a coming of age movie situation. So my uncle had this long talk. Like everyone was just gathered downstairs. Like, thank God we thought you were gay for the longest time. And I'm like, okay, cool, dope. Don't speak to me ever again. And I just have refused to speak to my family about anything concerning to my sexuality because I'm like, it's like they make assumptions and they go with their assumptions, and that first assumption is what they feel is law. And like there's always just like this haunting disappointment that I could never detect or define properly about what I was doing. I didn't know if it was because I didn't like sports and therefore their fantasy of having a sports athlete's son was ruined. I didn't know if it was
Mhm.
simply because I was kind of an asshole, because I am to my family and they know they deserve it. But but there's so many different things. But then I got that message from them like, oh, you guys all perceive me as one way. So the disappointment was just in that, and now you guys want to embrace me for this other thing. Um, and I'm like, even then, I was like, that confirmation doesn't really mean anything because to me, I don't really understand what the big deal is. I get that you guys perceive this one thing as wrong, and I get that you want me to perform in a certain way. But even if I did perform in that way, which was what kids are doing, they don't have that self determination or definition of queer or straight or anything. They're just performing in a way that you have told them to perform. Even when I did that, even when I didn't say the word gay or the word straight or anything like that, and I was just everything you told me I am, you guys still had this disappointment in me, and you guys still label me as this other thing and still have these judgments about me. So no matter if I was that thing, you guys would still call me something else, and you guys will you still will enhance your sense of betrayal when I'm like not conforming to it. So either you guys just want me to feel ashamed about it and make you guys feel self-righteous in your determination, or it just doesn't actually matter. And no matter what, it has nothing to do with me. I too, I can't say in my early 20s. I'm only 25, so I'm still here. I'm still standing in that. I definitely like. There was a lot of that. I don't want to call it performative, but it kind of it's like you're trying to reaffirm yourself everywhere you're going, and then like you just kind of realize that it doesn't actually matter. Because no matter how many times you affirm it, either someone else the next day is going to get it wrong, or they're just going to do whatever they want. I'm not sure if this ever happened to you, but when I'm actively pursuing a girl, I'm actively talking to them, and when my straight friends come over and they notice me doing that, the first thing they
You
say,
told me about that on Twitter. I think that was one of the first times we connected. Bro, I was pissed. I was pissed, bro.
said, you know he's gay, right? And I it hit different. Oh, it hurt. Because it definitely had a natural reaction. Like what happened after that was very like palpable in that I there was no more chance. It was gone. And like so it was very real, like this idea of how the expression is. It's like it's a thing that y'all want to recognize when you need a hierarchy boost.
Mm.
And so that's what's going on there. It has nothing to do with me. I can correct people to the day their days are gone, and I can like sit there and say, you know, every single moment is treated like me coming out. Every single moment is me saying I am not gay, I am bisexual. If I'm not sleeping with you, it might probably doesn't matter. Um, and so I do think there's a gendered aspect to it too, like in terms of, you know, young girls are assumed to be straight no matter what they do, or at least secretly straight because it's like penis fascination or something. And like young boys are often like effeminized in this idea that like you are queer. Nothing you say ever can ever change the fact that you're not performing all these other things, so therefore you have to be gay. That's the only thing you can ever be. Um, so I do think a part of the coming out process is that affirmation of gender, but also a gender performance. There's a lot of things mixed into that you know all boils down to a fascination or overt fascination with like the masculine, but it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think people think I'm secretly straight anymore. But there was one time where like, you know, of course I write about bisexuality, and then lesbians found my Twitter
Oh
and like
boy.
were just like kind of attacking me basically. But then I found that they had all been diverted from a Reddit thread in which they all had, like, they'd posted a tweet of mine and they were all kind of responding to it, implying that I was probably married with children, which is like almost even worse. Like, not only do you think that I'm like secretly like, they were like, oh, I love how it's always straight people speaking for our community, and it's like, first of all, I'm not straight, but it's also weird that like you also imagine that I was like super invested in patriarchy. Woo!
Well,
Like, I don't even really bangs with marriage like that. So like they imagine like this suburban housewife like infiltrating the LGBTQ community rather than me just being like a person speaking about my own experiences. Very odd. Like an entire fantasy scenario constructed on Reddit about me.
I'm happy we got to the conversation of LGBTQ community, because that's also an aspect of this. It was like question number 3 here, so we can just skip straight to that one, because I think JR.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to quickly, before we get to that, because I think that we all have things that we need to say about that. But no, you were talking about perception, so I just kind of wanted to say just a little bit more on that. I'm sorry.
We're having a conversation. You can do it.
I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. So like I said, I just remember like growing up and always being perceived as gay. And so like in my mind, that's just kind of how people just perceive me in general. But I've noticed that things have changed over the last couple of years with me, you know, going to the gym and having like muscles, and also being like brown skin, dark skin. Also like other things, like some days my voice is like really, really deep. And some days I wear certain clothes and it's like, oh, you're straight. And it's like, what? Like that's
thing.
never, it's weird for me
It's
because
so
that's
weird
never
getting
ever
older
been,
and then like
yeah, getting older, right. It's weird for me because that has never ever been what people just automatically assume about me. So now like, I guess what I'm also saying is that like, there's this conditional perceived straightness about me, right? Depending on what I wear, depending on how my voice or how deep my voice is or whatever. I'm conditionally assumed to be straight. However, that can change in the blink of an eye once I start talking, or if I get excited about Beyonce or whatever, right? If I start talking about partners or just whatever. But for me, it has also like been this weird thing of like starting to create a possible barrier between me and other like LGBT people, where they think I'm straight, and I'm like, what?
Oh,
like
the straight passing
yeah, like straight. Well, yeah, the myth, but also like I've never gotten this. Like this is a new experience for me. Like as a person who I grew up being feminine, I grew up being someone who everybody identified as like, oh, what do you call it? Like visibly queer, right? That was my experience just growing up throughout like teenagehood or whatever, adolescence. And so now, like over the last couple of years, it's just this completely different experience of people assuming that I am straight until I start speaking. And like, so it's just such a bizarre thing.
You know what it is? It's the beard. I got the same.
Well, this is quarantine.
It's the beard.
Before quarantine, this was never, I'd never had a beard. I never had hair. So this is like quarantine stuff. So I'm talking about before quarantine too. Yeah.
I also think it's in part like, it's about what community they see you as having an affinity with. Like, so for example, because I guess I read as very straight, especially to friends that I had before my Instagram popped off. Like I went on vacation with, I went on vacation to Puerto Rico last year with a bunch of my like old friends, and I'm thinking like, oh my god, like I love them so much. We got along so well when I was in college. This is going to be such a fun trip. Like, and then they made a comment about like one of their exes being bi and how like revolted they were, and I was like, I'm right here. Why would I let you? And I tried to like be like compassionate, but also be like, what you just said is bigoted and wrong, and like I don't want to ever hear that from you again, but compassionately, like in the nicest way possible. Like we're stuck on vacation, and then on our way back from like an excursion, they're in the group chat and they don't even think, like it's like they literally don't even consider me a part of the queer community to think that they should censor themselves. Because then they were like, oh, like there were no cute boys, and they were like, oh, like the water was mad dirty, probably made them gay. And I was like, it's like, I'm right here. And they're like, oh, but you're different. Like the gendered aspect of it, as well as the community, like female bisexuality is totally chill because they make out with their friends too. But like, they're like, but men though. And I don't understand it's that cishet women see themselves in a higher place than bi men, even though for me, as in terms of my community, like that's not how I see it. So I think it's that they see me as still like being part of their community, no matter how far off into the other I go, because I still am a very feminine woman. And they're like, whatever, you'll still side with us. You'll still agree with us. You'll still see yourself as better than bi men. And they don't understand why I feel connected to my bi community more so than I do to them. That was the last vacation. That was the last time I spoke to any of those people. Like,
it do go like that. It booms.
I got off the flight, deleted all those phone numbers.
Exactly.
Good for you.
Like it's interesting. That's why I'm really happy I have to have this conversation, because both of those stories I relate to heavily. I bangs with the whole like this aspect of me in a certain way has never existed before. I like even like this idea of me being handsome was just like a whole different peculiarly other thing. Because I did grow up like very thin and bony. Like I think I posted a picture of me as like my youngest age. You probably see me. I was like 6 years or 5 years old, and my arm. Like someone like DMs like, your arms were thin. You were pencil thin. I was like, yeah. I was like, I used to be like a very thin child. I didn't gain weight until my senior year of high school. I was just like tall. I was just getting longer and lengthier, and like I could fit into. I was malnourished, literally. It was not at all an entertaining thing. Like I remember a teacher having to speak to me because she was concerned. She thought that I wasn't eating at home. It turned into a whole thing.
Oh boy.
But it was like, no, I just have a really high metabolism. I'm putting away more food than I weigh. And it just wasn't at all like what it needed to be. But a part of that, me being thin, a part of me being like very, you know, wide-eyed and everything, is that those aspects were like entertained as, you know, feminine, and therefore it only enhanced that narrative. And then now that I'm older, it's like most people can't tell just by looking at me. And like even in my conversation pieces, because I'm like also very just distant, and if I don't want to talk to you, I just won't. It You can't read that much into me, but then you have a conversation with me, and I get a bit more excited in my pitch and how I talk about things, and I'm not hiding anything about me from anyone. So I'm going to talk about, you know, my sexual history. Then that is something else altogether different. Then it's like, oh, so you're okay. I just need clarification, and then that's when things starts going sideways or going the right direction. But that straight passing, you know, mythology constantly came up. It annoyed me. I think it was like a year ago, my 25th birthday, when India Moore had that conversation about the idea of straight passing, and like it was a back and forth. But then I got attacked like the day of my birthday. I just lost off for 24 hours. Like this idea.
People love to protect the idea of straight passing. Like they feel really
like
passionately into it.
It's like, okay, so say it's true. Like, like we're in these circles and like all this homophobic stuff has happened. I've ended a 10-year friendship off the grounds that I was not banging with their homophobia anymore. Like it was literally New Year. So it was like maybe I want to say 2 weeks before my birthday. So literally before everyone started talking about that street passing stuff, I'm like, I have to end a whole friendship over this. Like my friend circles don't change the context of my queerness. In fact, it has opened my eyes to the things that had just been going on right in front of my face that I do not like that pause bullshit. I'm like, I'm hanging out with my friends. I'm paying for the hotel room for New Year's. I paid for a bottle. I'm making peace with a person I do not like because he forgot I understand French enough to know when you're calling me slurs. So I'm like, all this stuff has happened in the last year, and I'm hanging out with this person who is not supposed to know anything about me. We don't like each other. We know we don't like each other. We understand we don't like each other, but we're in the same space because we have the same friends. And I'm looking over and I'm watching you make homophobic jokes with them. Me and you are friends. That person's also your friend. We've all known each other for like 5 years, and me and my best friend known each other for 10 years. And all this is happening in front of my face. And you expect me not to want to say something to you. Like, hey, what you were doing wasn't okay. And like, it's actually being really harmful. And it's giving me like a really bad time altogether. And then the conversation should go, oh, dang, bro, I didn't understand I did that to you. I'm sorry. Maybe I should rethink how I'm like moving about. You know, that we have this context of our relationship where I know you identify this way and this is who you are, no matter which circle you're in. And that's not what I got. It was like, oh, we didn't mean it that way, so you should be okay with it. And, you know, between two Black people hearing that, I'm like, you would think the cognitive dissonance would link together and you would go, wait a minute, I'm sounding kind of white right now. But it just doesn't click.
When I brought up the whole, like, oh, the water's dirty, making them gay thing, I also was fed with, oh, well, that's not how we meant it. And I was like, you know, I'm sure that when you were talking, you weren't cognizant of the fact because you're not used to having to mind your language around a queer person. And that doesn't mean that you didn't mean what you said. And she was just like, you know, you're so mature. And I was like, no. You're almost sugar plot. Oh my god.
Don't compliment me. I got that. Oh, you're so wise. You're so deep about it. Fuck that. I'm not. I'm from the same neighborhood.
She's a huge influencer. So sometimes I like see her face. She just got like a commercial deal, and the commercial came on, and I just want to shoot myself in the face.
And it do be like that. So like literally, it's like it's so difficult to have to constantly readjust your relationships because they can't perceive you in a totality. They just cannot define.
Yeah.
It changes the concept of relationship, and so that straight passing thing just doesn't click well because it makes a lot of assumptions that, oh, proximity means safety, means influence, but in reality, I'm like, my queerness actually sets me back in terms of a lot of our conversations, a lot of the things that I can do in this group, and not that I would sacrifice anything about any of my identities to fit into any group. It's just that you are
Right.
giving me a lot more agency than I have ever actually experienced because of my queerness. And you have two different groups who's putting me at the bottom of the rung. Because I'm like, the truth of the matter is, if I had not come out, you guys would respect me more than now. Like literally now. There's something about that B going on that just makes you not want to have fun with me. And that's kind of weird. It's like really a self-internal thing. It has nothing to do with me, but it's everything to do with what you want to do. Like even that situation.
Passing is supposed to be about like accessing privilege. So that girl in particular that I'm talking about is like someone who had like a way larger following and was like inviting me to PR events that certainly my platform would have benefited from. So it's like, it's also that they're like, you better not, it's like, of course, on a moral level, that's not what I would ally myself with. I don't care enough to be friends with someone, but it's also that they're like, you better like sacrifice, like there's no circumstance in which you can leverage your connections at all under the assumption that you could be straight, when like not bi people do that all the time. Like lesbians can pretend to be straight too. It's literally like the assumption is very reliant on gender performance. So like it's not specific to bi people.
To bi people, yeah.
It's like there are lesbians and there are gay men who are like, you know what, I'm just gonna let people assume what they want to assume, and who leverage their connections and have to like rub hands with homophobic people all the time and do so to get their feet in the door, and they don't get the same stigma that bi people do.
Exactly.
I think one of the differences is that like when people imagine a bi person, they imagine a person who if you're a woman, then you are a feminine woman and you are married to a masculine man. If you are a bi man, then you are a masculine man and you are married to a woman or partnered with a woman, a feminine woman. And their minds can't even fathom any other sort of composition of another bi person who is either single or poly and involved with people of more than one gender, or just whatever, or connected to a queer community or whatever, or doesn't they're a man and they're feminine, or they're a woman and they're masculine, or whatever. They have this very singular idea of what it is to be a bi person. And so anytime bisexuality comes up, they are like sort of like attacking or piling on to the idea of what they think a bi person is versus the reality, which is bi people are so diverse and it's not one size fits all.
I
It's
mean,
that they put all these different configurations of people into this one group. They were just like, not straight, not gay. Everyone else go here, and there are just so many manifestations of bi that it doesn't even make sense as like one just like category for everyone who doesn't fit into the other two. But sure.
yeah, exactly. Because I'm like, I explained it. I'm very often saying that, if you look at it and you understand how bisexuality is really only defined by that fluidity, and like just that's the one thing about being monosexual just doesn't really appeal to you, that you can freely and openly just flow through with either or, which is basically everyone. It's like a lot of people actually fit into this category, and whether or not you want to identify with it is literally just up to you. And the only thing I'm really doing by saying that is just admitting like this core aspect of myself that, the gender binary that's going on there, or gender exclusiveness that's going on there, just doesn't exactly pertain to me. And so all these other things being added to it, like even like these things that it's a commonality, is mostly just a reaction to how everyone else is like coming to terms with it. This manifestation of rage that comes like on like after we came out, it was like very, very palpable, because you're told to expect this one thing when coming out, and like this is the experience, and they generalize like bisexuality into queerness, other queer categories, so often that you don't know anything else except for this expectation of being welcome, a community that accepts you, a community that won't judge you, a community that will listen to your narrative and have a relationship with it. And then you get the exact opposite. And then this is like outrage, because you see the hypocrisy happening right in front of your face. And no one wants you to talk about it, because you're perceived as the one having the most privilege in the situation. And sure, in terms of you assuming that I would want to erase aspects of myself to fit into any sort of relationship, that can be a confusing sort of privilege if I close one eye and pray hard enough. But it's really not. It's like this, it's just a repulsion with like just the definition that people are judging on you, and just the aversion to that definition. And it's so difficult to have to calibrate to, because you see like Javon again constantly attacked, and constantly like even on level like the read. Like I was listening to an episode, I did not expect to hear about Javon or Kalani in an episode.
And they brought him up.
They brought him up. They
And
were
said
like,
what?
they called him, this platform just called him gay. And like in the same episode also, they were like discussing bisexuality and advocating for it. And for one moment.
Isn't Crystal, I don't know her labels, but she's talked about being attracted to women before, and she's talked about being attracted to men. I don't know.
Literally always talking about husbands, so I don't get it.
Yeah, it leans very bisexual, but very little in terms of like, she never actually defines it, but then she says like very much that it's a fluid interpretation of self, and like she actively leans like towards a lesbian definition, but is not exclusively like, it's like not exclusively impartial to sleeping with men. I think one episode she finally like discussed her last relationship with a man, and it being like very intrinsic and like very not detrimental in terms of abuse, but like it impacted her on like a very cellular level of how it ended, and like both therapy to discuss that one relationship and trying to get over it and find like something to, you know how bad relationships end.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so something like that, but it wasn't she doesn't ever really
use that
define
word
herself or use any labels to define herself.
Okay.
It did give an idea that she should understand, because she did talk about like how lesbians react to the idea of her not really caring if she ends up with a guy or not. I think most of it is just that guys suck, and so she's just like, if I can avoid it, I will. And that's literally just how she defines it in a lot of episodes, that if I can avoid having to go through what I go through when dating a man, I will look the other way. But if one comes across that is the holy grail, why not?
I mean, maybe if she was like a better person to bi men, then she would have the option of dating bi men, and she would find that bi men don't suck.
Exactly. But it was like, that's what made the episode so weird, because you go from defending like bisexual men, and that's like her whole entire thing, is that every episode they're discussing it and they're going like, oh, bisexuality exists, and oh, it's an existing thing, and they are very open about like, you know, in the past I had these very questionable views about it, and you know, in educating myself I see it this way. But then there's still that significant misstep when you're looking at someone like Javon. But definitely there's this aspect of it that I'm like, even when trying to defend us, there's still the harm being done. I'm like, if you can do the lip service of discussing it this way, you can internalize your own actions enough to realize that defining someone like that on your, especially the read, because I'm like, as you know, quote unquote woke as the read is, people will hear a misinformation on there and run with it just because it's Crystal and Kid Fury, and they'll take that as just a legitimate fact to be assumed. Well, they'll double check it for us, and I'm like, they're literally on here saying they're not journalists, and they won't.
Especially like, that's the thing too, like especially when it comes to, this is kind of, sorry, I have so many thoughts all at once, I'm sorry. Okay. One at a time.
We're scaffolding a very difficult thing. This is why I told them that I can't do this by myself. I can't be trusted to do this on my own.
So like, there's so many things I want to say. I'm just going to say them very quickly. Okay, so here we go. So a lot of people, who are not part of, you know, LGBT identities, will go into a show like The Read and assume that, oh, these are these two people who are, you know, from this community or have these identities, so they must know everything there is to know about this stuff, right? So I think that is like, first of all, that's a bit like really, really irresponsible as like a consumer, or like really frustrating. I would say like establishing that boundary of like, oh, I go to watch the show to learn everything there is to know about the entire LGBT Black community, right? These are two individuals with their own perspectives and their own knowledges and also their own shortcomings. So they know certain things about certain things. And so it's frustrating that they do have to, or there is the expectation that they must now know everything there is to know about Black LGBT people or life.
Yeah. I felt particularly frustrated this week because I saw that they had a bisexuality episode on Tamron Hall, and like get like all of their news, I think, from Tamron Hall at this point. It's like CNN and then like pop culture news and stuff from Tamron Hall. So Zachary Zane was invited, and I love Zachary Zane. Like I know Zachary Zane in real life, and like we've done collaborations together. So it's not that I don't think that he's qualified to speak on bisexuality, but it's like when you have like a Zachary Zane speaking at every single bisexuality forum, you don't get a fair picture. Like I was like, oh my God, you're gonna have this same white man who's on every single panel talk on your show.
I'm very deliberate in who I choose.
Like,
I just want to point that out. I didn't pitch this like this. I just said I'm going to speak to some people, and we're all Black, so this is how it ended up. Because I did not want specifically that.
But as a Black woman, as Tamron Hall is, if you have this white person speaking of what the bisexual experience is to other Black people, they're first of all they get this idea that like that's just the white
people. Exactly.
And they think that their community is so separate from it, and that they are not like by people that they see every day and like probably code as straight or gay. And then it allows them like that distancing. So it just felt like so, I don't know, irresponsible. Like I feel like they could have done the episode so much better, especially
with how we're still reliving Oprah Winfrey's DL episode. That thing will not leave us alone, and that's why I find it so amazing that I'm in Oprah magazine. I might actually have to condemn that because I'm like, it did so much damage, and it's still doing so much.
Do you
damage.
Also remember the Oprah episode where multiple Oprah episodes where trans people were invited on, and it was like, so what you got down there? And they talked about it in that Disclosure documentary on Netflix, where Oprah was just like, a lot of talk shows at the time were like, so which do you have in there? And they were just like
the Jerry Springer model.
Right. But they were like, we're the compassionate Jerry Springer model though, you know? They're like, this is journalism. Like Oprah's like, and like you think that makes it better to
But I'm like, even Oprah admits that there were episodes where she looks back on it now and she's like, that was like just bold exploitation. And she's like, especially that white supremacist episode, that infamous episode where she looks back at it and she goes, that was exploitation. I was exploiting like my own race. Like I brought these people up here and I framed it as we're going to have a conversation. We're going to try to flip them. But then even then she's like, that wasn't what happened. It was like, it was literally just me sitting here watching these people like bash me, not changing their mind, digging their heels in. And yeah, it appeared like, I think 10 years, 20 years afterwards, they came back on the show. They were like, Oprah, like appearing your show and getting dragged from my life actually changed me for the better. Thank you for all of that. But it's like the exploitation was still done and the damage was still done. And like as much as these two people may have changed their mind 10 years later, 10,000 other people may have just been converted to white supremacy because they saw, got you on stage on Oprah Winfrey's show, it got you a platform to act a fool, and you could inspire reactions out of people who now have to take time out of their lives to care about you as a person because of the damage you're doing to them. They'll never be able to forget you because they'll remember that time that they went in front of you and you were able to say horrible things to them. And now they're walking around with that wound in them. Because that's what trauma is, and that's what bigotry does to people. Like, it gives you a wound you have to carry around.
Facts. And to return to talking about the read, so I talked about the audience, irresponsibilities, but then also now onto, these two hosts. And, if you knew anything about what it is to be bisexual, you would know that you would not want to learn about bisexuality from a gay man. You would not want to learn about bisexuality from a woman who is a woman with Crystal's views, is what I will say. or I don't know, her views are evolving and she is trying, but she's not in a place where she can teach people responsibly about what bisexuality is based on what I understand of her views. So it's like, yeah, like gay men don't think bisexual men are real. And they see us as like this like thing, this like challenge, or like, oh, you're not all the way out or whatever. And I'm not 100% about like how it is to be a bi woman and hear from lesbians, but I will always hear that it's not good. I always hear that lesbians don't have good things to say.
If they do, first of all, if they think I'm straight, they're really into it, because then it's like a power thing. Like, oh, we can change.
I can turn your sexuality, right? I can convert you to be gay.
They're like, ew. And then if I do manage to get a lesbian to date me, the whole time she's like, but do you want to leave me for a man? Or like, I had like a very on and off situation with this young person, and at one point, like we were off, like we were not dating. And I was like, well, if we're not dating, I want to go be messy with my ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
And then as one does when they're being
as one does when they're single.
When freedom was there.
You're single. You were single, right? Yeah, like what?
And we get to
it. But I knew we were getting back together, so it was partially pettiness, but whatever. But so when we did get together, she was like, if you would have hooked up with a girl, it would have been fine, but it's a man. And I was like, how is it different though?
Can I talk about something? Sorry, go ahead. Finish. I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
Go ahead, because the only comment I had was mess. So
wait, Gabby, finish your thought. Yeah.
I'll just wrap it up with like also like the expectation of like they want me to like hate dicks. So it'll be like, you know, is a strap-on just as good, or does it feel the same? Like it like does not, but does it have to? Like that's a weird. First of all, it's like not in our control. It's like just technology. It just feels like such a weird ask to make, and then like almost feels like because it's going to be an argument no matter what, then like my role in relationships with lesbians has often been to just like lie, just be like, yes, it feels exactly the same. Oh my god, yes. Or
yes, whose is it? It's yours, definitely.
Or to, like, oh my god, I just hate men. Like, yeah, like they just suck. Like, yeah, I'm not even attracted to them that much anymore. But then at the same time, whenever I'm like, I was like, at one point I was like, oh my god, I really like don't like cishet men most of the time. Like maybe like bisexual is not the right label for me. And she misunderstanding that to think that I was trying to encroach on lesbian space was like, oh my god, like you're not a lesbian. I hate how bi girls always want to think that they're lesbians. They always want to be like, I'm gay. And I was like, so you want me to reassure you constantly that I hate men and I don't want to date them, but then when I want to change my label, which was not even, obviously I still stick with bisexual, but I was more so trying to switch to a label that would signal my proximity to more queer communities. And she's like, but don't like act like you're gay though. And I'm like, well, which do you want me to be? I can like, you need to pick.
Also relates that conversation of who gets to use the slurs. Yeah, which is a conversation I completely fucking avoid. I do not even dabble in it. You notice I don't even say it because I've
been blocking so many people. I think I'm up to like 3,500 or something like that. I'm dead ass too. I'm not even like throwing out a number. I'm dead ass serious. Like my block list on Twitter is strong.
I'm about to switch that because like anime, Avatar, Twitter be finding me to talk about lesbian issues. I don't know what it is about that particular confluence of identities, but they're always like, you just simply cannot call yourself femme, which is weird because I don't understand. I'm like, what? So at first I only had like a bi girls club shirt, right? And then non-binary people said, we would love to be included in your shop. And I was like, you know, I literally just dropped my first shirt and didn't even think about it growing to where it's at. But I would love to be as inclusive as possible. And I want to do bi femmes club stuff. I didn't do like any masculine stuff because I don't think I should be a style person for masculine people. But I put femme on a shirt and then immediately people were like, this is disgusting. Like I got like some of the worst harassment on Twitter I have ever experienced because simply the use of that word that they're like lesbians can't have anything. And I'm like, y'all have a whole thing. It's your lack of attraction to men. That's your thing. Why do you need the word men?
It's like, your community is like 100 years strong in this country. It's like 100 years strong. I'm like, there's a big question in here about that, about online communities and bisexuality and why it's more prevalent now than ever before. You have more people standing out, but that's definitely attached to that, and who gets to use what slurs, and like this idea that I don't argue in favor of it, because I'm like, I don't really. It was like I spent so long just not using it that it just doesn't come naturally to me. It's like if a mixed kid starts saying the N word like really late in life and you can hear it, it doesn't come out naturally to them.
It does.
It's just like, you might just you might not need to be a part of it. It might take some time, but don't just throw it in every other sentence. So I'm like, I have a distance to the word that I'm just like, it doesn't come out naturally to me. And like, if you notice, I think I told JR this, that I took my labels out of my bio because I felt like I was performing. It was literally after that situation with India Moore, and everyone was like hopping in, and like I had like I looked at my ad, I had like 100 plus mentions going on at one time.
I didn't know about any of this.
It happened a while ago. I got over it pretty quickly. They got over it pretty quickly. They, it's something about left-leaning niches on social media that they
left-leaning what?
Like left-leaning niches.
Oh. I thought you said, oh my God. Yeah. I was like, we are not gonna do that. I don't care if you're upset. We're not gonna do that. Anyway,
I know you will make sure that nothing, even by accident, slips out. But like these groups, they will burn out pretty quickly, and they're just there for the spectacle of it. And that's what was going on there. They was there for the spectacle of like being right. It happened the other day too, during the debate where I was like very justly accused of more ableism, because I did not know Joe Biden had a stutter. I did not know that at all.
I don't think I knew that either.
It threw me off by surprise. I didn't know that, especially because I have verbal apraxia. So like I had to sound out and like prepare my muscles ahead of time, double in my mouth, because my tongue doesn't always follow my words. So I didn't know he had a stutter, but the thing that he was tripping over was,
black stuff.
issues. Yeah, literally the black stuff. So and I got someone who was just in, like, I never, like, they follow me, but I analyzed their account and I deemed them not worthy of me following back because I did not like their content. So so they hopped in my mentions, and then they were just like coming at me really hard about like, ableism, and like mock him because he had a stutter, and like, you did this. And I'm very reasonably explaining that I actually didn't know, but yeah, you're definitely right. I should have did that. But then more people were chiming in, and I just blocked them because I'm like, I already admitted that you were right, and I apologize. And I was going to delete the post, but I was like, but you guys are just like, if I've already said you were right, I should have did that. Why is people still popping in to perform this outrage at me, other than just like to showcase that these things give us an identity you stand by? And like, I had to be very critical about that, even for myself, because I'm like, it does happen in that performative like antic of social media. And then when looking at my bio, it just like having the labels there, it felt like I was trying to justify my existence in these queer conversations and get people like, see, this is my passport, I can walk through here, kind of. And I didn't like that. And I'm like, versus me just living and existing in it, it's like very much so that we were just talking about like the early 20s thing of like constantly having to correct people and constantly advocating versus just existing and doing it on my own terms. It felt like more authentic to just take it out. And I'm like, if you follow me, you see me, I don't hide it. It's not like it's you have to struggle to find it. I'm very openly and very actively talking about it. But it was like something about it being in the bio, having it be the first thing you see. I was just like, it didn't feel right to me. It's not like it's gender identity. My pronouns are still in there. But I was like, but something about the bi aspect, having like the bi black writer I used to have in there, it just didn't feel like it was necessary. And it felt like it was just me reiterating this thing that just did not need to be reiterated. It was like an easy way for me to come out constantly. And it just didn't feel like all natural. I was like, that's like, for other people, it might be what they want to do. But it's like, look at my personality. I was like, hell no, fuck that. I like making things easy for anybody. JR, you say you had something you wanted to say earlier. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Fuck. What were we talking about? So knowing, blah, blah. I don't remember.
We were talking about social
It's okay.
media, bisexuality. Again, Gabby hitting all the good points.
I'm just so tired. I mean, I don't even let them like piss me off anymore. I have largely divested from using Twitter unless like something wild happens, like the president getting diagnosed with coronavirus. But so I'm back.
That's so. It's so sad.
But because on Instagram, like everyone who sees my content primarily before they open this new Reels bag is your followers. So like I can say whatever I want and not have like this hate train follow me versus like I can tweet something and someone just find it. Like I tweeted about Louis C.K. once, and then like apparently he has stans, and they all found me and like they were like, "You're too ugly to be raped." I was like,
oh my God.
what? I've never liked someone so much that I was like, let me go be disrespectful on Twitter. And like that's like really the atmosphere of Twitter. Now that Instagram has Reels, though, I will say that it's pretty adjacent to Twitter in that way. Like now random people can find your content, and I especially like I post something about Trump and like a MAGA stan is like, well, he's not a white supremacist actually. I think it's like,
yeah, white supremacists don't like him. They say they called him a nigger coddler specifically. I did that whole thing. I went through Chip Mania, wrote that whole article for my Substack, and I saw that. I'm like, they really do not. I was like, they don't like him. It was like very actively. They do not like him. White supremacists do not like Trump. It was weird to see. It freaked me out. But they don't like him very specifically. They don't.
it like literally is not even processing, but we'll get into that when we're
That's a different conversation altogether. We hit.
I remember what I wanted to say. If we want to change gears at all.
You can change gears. How did nigger collar trigger that?
I don't even know how, but what I realized, especially when hearing, and I hope, please, Gabby, if you feel at any point where I'm overstepping a little bit, please let me know, and I will do my best to check in with myself too. But especially when I hear some of my Black lesbian friends talk about bi women, I hear, pardon?
I said, I don't even know what you're gonna say, but I agree.
Oh, okay. Oh, especially when I hear some of my Black lesbian friends talk about bi women, and even when you were saying, your face is cracking me up, and even hearing you say like what you said, the way I'm hearing it is it just kind of feels like there's some really unhealed animosity or unhealed tension or unhealed trauma, or like what women are taught as like being what it is to be like a good woman is to, be with a man. And so, many Black lesbians have done a lot of work around that, around like, no, like I'm still a woman even though I'm not attracted to men or whatever. And then on the man side, a lot of gay men have constantly come across the idea that I am not a man because I am not attracted to women. And so when bisexual folks oftentimes come in contact with, gay men and lesbian women, in my experience, like there's just so much, it feels like there's just so much, tension there or unhealed stuff there with like their own gender, sexuality stuff, and like what they've been told, like, oh, you're not a good man because you're not attracted to women, or whatever stuff, right? And so, yeah, I feel like I'm constantly coming in contact with gay men who just have like a lot of issues in that subject. And so even if they are somewhat positively engaging me, there's always that like that fixation or fascination about what it is to be with a woman or whatever. And I'm just like, this is your shit. This is not my shit. And I acknowledge I have a lot of shit I need to work on and I am working through and I have worked on. But I'm also acknowledging this is not my shit. And you're putting your shit that you have, that your family told you, oh, you're not attracted to girls, so you're not a real man. You're gay, so you're not a real man, or whatever the fuck. Or you think that being with a woman makes you a real man. And so you think that I am maybe more of a man than you are because I am attracted to women or whatever the fuck it is, right? Because I'm not a fucking therapist. I don't fucking know what your shit is. But I'm just saying, you're putting your shit about sexuality and gender onto me. And I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to connect with somebody. I'm just trying to laugh. I'm just trying to have sex or whatever the fuck it is, right? Don't put your shit on me. Handle your own shit. Handle your own shit.
I dropped a link because I don't have awareness of this issue from the side of a gay man or anything, but certainly I have a lot of experience dealing with lesbians, and a really good academic article that I read that
Let me look.
It's called Bisexual Women and the Threat to Lesbian Space, and it's about like when the identity of lesbian was constructed in the United States in like the 60s, 70s, it was really created as a like, wow, gay men are taking up so much space, and because of patriarchy are granted a lot more room to advocate for their needs. So as lesbians, we need to create our own feminist iteration of that. And then when bisexual women were like, okay, so what about us? They were like, oh my God, like that's completely separate from like this identity we've already constructed, and the language around like born this way, since for bi people in general, it's so often not like, oh, I like woke up and knew I was different. I just like knew that some things were the same. Therefore, I was a little confused for a bit on what was going on with me. Like, because we've politically constructed these labels in a particular way throughout history. There's like this, well, if we've constructed it this way and we've done so much advocacy this way, we've made all these signs that say born this way, and we've gotten so comfortable with this language, it would be such an immense shift. And it was so historically and traditionally important to us to construct identity that way that the shift is too much.
Stephen, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Like I saw his mouth moving, but I was like, I don't know. I can't hear you.
Hear me now?
No.
It's barely no. Can't hear you still.
Oh, so it's the program itself.
Oh, I can hear you. I can hear you. I can hear you. I can hear you.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Now I can hear y'all, so that's amazing.
Oh.
I don't want to restart it. I had, such a great point. I was going to feel like so big brain and intelligent. Let's try this again.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me now?
It's still low. It's back to low.